A transfer of rulership is coming, and the kingdom of heaven will be on earth. Righteousness will be spread throughout the whole four corners of the earth. Wickedness will be put down. Eternal life. That's what's promised to the elect. All right, all Israel, but it starts with the elect. And that's how the earth will be governed by immortals, perfect angelic forces who are going to come down and rule on earth. Extraterrestrial bodies will be able to do things that humans do, but in heavenly bodies, like eating, drinking. Did not Yahushua say he's going to drink wine with us in the kingdom? Well, how do you drink wine with a spiritual body? Well, we're going to have out of this world capabilities in those new bodies.
Look, when Babylon is destroyed on fire, it's going to shake up the whole world. We're going to be beamed up. The hopeful elect, if we're the elect, we're going to be beamed up. And we're going to see this destruction pursuant to Psalms 91 and other scriptures. And we're going to hover over Babylon, and we're going to see the destruction. We're going to get a ringside seat to the war of Armageddon. And then we're going to come back down. When we come back down to the earth, we taking everything over. The saying to the Most High shall take the kingdom.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakwadash, double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. All right, now what I want to go into today is dealing with, all right, a continuation of the book of First Timothy. We made to the 5th chapter, and the timing, of this is how you know everything's in the spirit, because when you go into First Timothy, the 5th chapter, it deals with, a welfare system that was set up, for, okay, the widows, and it made me, the spirit had me just research, comparing the welfare system in ancient Israel to the one that the Apostle Paul was implementing amongst the church of Ephesus. Okay, then it also went into the welfare system of Rome, and how it was corrupt. Okay, and you compare it to the welfare system of today, it does way more harm, than good, and I want to go here to First Timothy. It deals with the etiquette of the church as well. So we're going to go into these things. The Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters are edified. Now this is First Timothy 5:1. It says, "Never speak harsh." This is an NLT. All right. It said, "Never speak harshly to an older man." And it speaks about, when you read in the KJV, it says not to rebuke an elder. Okay. Now, when we speak about these things, these are, the elders, the heads of churches. Okay. And starting with our apostles and elders. Okay. There's a certain way, that you would address those men. It was going into an etiquette thing. Okay, and when it comes to certain rebuke, well, there are certain men set up to rebuke certain men. Now that doesn't mean, all right, if someone's in the camp, and they have, the title of the elder, that they're above rebuke. Okay, but you would just speak to them in a particular way. Okay, that's why I said, but appeal to him respectfully as you would to your own father. Okay, so especially when you begin, when the apostles and elders on down, which a lot of us have never, directly talked to those men. Certain bishops and elders will never directly, talk to those men on this side. Okay, but amongst our local churches, there's a etiquette, when dealing. Okay, it says talk to younger men as you would your own brothers, treat older women as you would your mother, and treat younger women with all purity as you would your own sisters. Okay, so there was Apostle Paul, giving etiquette amongst the church, because you will have, these gatherings, with older, where the elders, younger men in the faith will come together. So you would, be more familiar, with those younger men, men, okay, that's, on your level, spiritually, okay. And then you would deal with, the older men, the older brothers in the faith, the older men in the faith. There was a certain respect and reverence you will have for them. Okay, the older women, because you have older women that, was coming into the faith. All right, well, you would treat them with the reverence, all right, that you would treat a mother. Okay, and the women, you know, that was your age. Now you have, certain men and women, the Lord gonna do his thing, and put certain, women, with brothers, but every woman that believes in a potential wife, so you would treat her, as a sister, as you would treat your own sister, and it's all based on having each other's best interests in mind, all right, and having discipline, all right, where there's not no, big freak show, okay, no big freaky deaky thing. No, it's a thing of order and being edified in, okay, Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. And if there is, men and women, all right, that the Lord brings into a union, well, that's done in order, all right, just not no random, freak fest, okay, like the world. So let's go here. I want to get this word real quick, etiquette. Um, let's get this word here. So you get this word etiquette. It says the customary, all right, code, all right, of polite behavior in a society among members of a particular profession, which is this faith, this belief, or group. Okay, the church of Yahushua, the body. So there's a certain etiquette that we have amongst one another. All right, and it's based in the scriptures. Okay, so um, let's go back to First Timothy. All right, and we're going to get the overview and the backdrop, dealing with this. So I'm going to read through this and then we're going to go to the chat, all right, and really, discuss, what was practically happening, at the writing of this letter, during the time of the writing of this letter. It said, take care of any widow who has no one else to to care for her. But if she has children or grandchildren, their first responsibility is to show godliness at home and repay their parents by taking care of them. This is something that pleases the Most High. All right. So there was a difference between widows who had no one to care for them and widows that had, relatives, especially those relatives in the faith, that believe, it was their responsibility to make sure they take care, of their widows. Okay. And it says, now a true widow, a woman who is truly alone in this world, has placed her hope in the Most High. She prays night and day, asking the Most High for his help. But the widow who lives only for pleasure is spiritually dead even while she lives. You see, because Ephesus was a booming city. It was a popping city. All right, it was a Greco-Roman. It was lavish. Okay, had a lot of traffic. Okay, and you had certain women. Hey, that was for the streets, man. So Apostle Paul, like, look, he's really laying down the protocol and the groundwork and the requirements when it came to who was eligible for this welfare system for widows. Okay, they had to be women of good report. All right, couldn't be no city girls. Okay, they had to be truly alone, truly with no help. All right, and they had to have a good report. All right, with those that lived for pleasure and thought that they were just going to use the welfare system to fund. Okay, their pleasures. Well, nah. Apostle Paul said that's dead. And any woman that lives like that is spiritually dead. Okay, and it says, give these instructions to the church so that no one will be open to criticism. But those who won't care for their relatives, especially those in their own household, have denied the true faith. Such people are worse than unbelievers. Yeah, so if you was of the faith and you had a widow in your household, your grandmother, your auntie, that was widowed, okay, she didn't have, a caretaker. Well, that was on you to do that. You believe, because part of faith is what treating our neighbors thyself, true agape, true love, so you were supposed to take on, their responsibility. All right. And these are rooted in Israelite customs, what you're going to get. It says a widow who is put on the list for support must be a woman who is at least 60 years old, all right, and was faithful to her husband. Okay. So the woman, there was an age requirement. All right. Then there was a, a moral requirement, a woman that was faithful to her husband. Like I said, Paul wasn't, he was making sure that no, he did. This ain't no soup kitchen for hoes. Okay. That ain't the play. And I'm reading this. I'm like, man, you see, you look how Esau got it today. All right. His welfare system creates hoes. Okay. And it says, 1 Timothy 5:10 says she must be well respected by everyone because of the good she has done. Has she brought up her children well? Has she been kind to strangers and served other believers humbly? Has she helped those who are in trouble? Has she always been ready to do good? The younger widows should not be on the list. Okay, so now he's giving, he gave the requirements, all right, for those that should be on the list. It was an age requirement and it was a good report. All right. And it was a discipline. She was faithful to her husband, her one husband. Okay. And it says the younger widows, all right, now these are the ones that should not be on the list. The younger widows should not be on the list. All right. And this shows you the Apostle Paul understood female nature. Okay. They said the younger widows should not be on the list because their physical desires will overpower their devotion to Hamashiach and they will want to remarry. All right. So younger women, okay, they will still, have, their burning to remarry. Okay. So it will be best for them, all right, as Apostle Paul is finna say, then they will be guilty of breaking their previous pledge. And if they are on the list, they will learn to be lazy and will spend their time gossiping from house to house, meddling in other people's business and talking about things that they shouldn't. So he was like, these younger women, they shouldn't be idle like that. All right, because they're still in the phase of their life when they're going to want to remarry. All right. You become busybodies, they go on gossip. Okay, so you like, now the younger women, they're not eligible for that list. Okay, verse 15 it says, so I advise these younger widows to marry again, have children, and take care of their own homes. So he was like, look, these younger women, okay, they should marry, all right, have children, and take care of their own homes. Okay. Because if they marry, well, they have a caretaker now. Okay, so they wouldn't need a welfare system because they're able-bodied. All right, that's basically what Paul is saying. Look, these able-bodied young women, they can remarry and head a house. I mean, and uh, uh keep house for their husband, and they'll be good. Okay, that's the best thing for them. Okay, but Paul, like you don't want to enable them. See, Esau's welfare system, it enables, okay, these able-bodied women. You know, there should be somebody wife, all right, keeping the house. And you see now a lot of these women, they're screaming and crying and all in the camera about food stamps. Well, if they had a husband, if they had some structure, they wouldn't even be on TikTok. Okay, they'll just be straight. They'll have a house to keep. Okay, but this government incentivized reckless behavior to where it destroys, okay, any type of chance of the women having stability. So the Apostle Paul, which you go into the law was all about stability, structure, and forwarding, all right, and setting up the next generation. Okay. It says, so I advise these younger widows to marry again, have children, and take care of their homes. Then the enemy will not be able to say anything against them. For I'm afraid that some of them have already gone astray and now, all right, follow Satan. All right. Talking about them young women, those in Ephesus. Okay. Because like I say, Ephesus was popping. You see? And you know, discipline, you know, that it took okay, to sit your ass down somewhere. You know, a lot of women didn't have it. All right. First Timothy 5:16, it says, if a woman who is a believer has relatives who are widows, she must take care of them and not put the responsibility on the church. Then the church can care for the widows who are truly alone. So Apostle Paul was setting, okay, up a system to where the people that needed the help would get the help. Okay, to where it wasn't a system that was going to be taken advantage of. Okay, it was going to be for the people that needed the help will get the help. The people that were most vulnerable, all right, will get the help. Okay, not like what Esau got set up. First Timothy 5:17 said, elders who do all right their work well should be respected and paid well. Okay, so it is, you know, because we talk about, you know, Jake, you know, because there's nothing wrong with paying your teachers, you know, just to make it short to the point. There's nothing wrong with paying your teacher, but they should be teaching you the right doctrine. Okay, and especially, you know, the elder men who, you know, have a lot of responsibility in the church. Okay, and that's why the Levites, you know, you go into what you call the salt offering. You know, the Levites, the reason why they didn't work because their full-time job was the temple. Okay, so the rest of the nation took care of the Levites. Okay, but you go back to what you call a salt offering. All right, because you go into the tithes, where part of their tithes was the salary. You know, because you go into the word salary goes into salt. You know, because people, you know, will be paid in salt in some instances, and they represent the salary. Okay, but the Levites, okay, they will be taken care of by the rest of the nation because their responsibility, all right, was to keep and maintain the temple, okay, all day, every day, okay, in which their temple represented what the presence of the Lord amongst his people, okay. So, you know, you have it today, you know, when men, you know, especially men that's been laboring, you know, men of good report, okay, starting out apostles and elders. Okay, they should, you know, be getting all right a salary. Okay, where they don't have to focus on trying to hustle and bustle in this world, where they can focus on, you know, governing. Okay, the church. All right, you see. So it says elders who do their work should be respected and paid well, especially those who work hard at both preaching and teaching. For the scripture says, you must not muzzle an ox to keep it from eating as it treads out the grain. And in another place, those who work deserve, all right, their pay. All right. So these, you know, and this beginning with our apostles and elders, you know, that they Because like I said, we're younger, able-bodied men, so we can get out, make it happen. You see, we do what we got to do. Most brothers, in the work field, you see. But beginning with our apostles and the elders, as they labor, especially you have this, the church is growing. Okay, those men, shouldn't have to worry about, finance. Okay, and at the end of the day, the Lord gonna provide. We never, solicit or pat the church down or grift. And if you whatever you're persuaded to give, is much appreciated. And it said, do not listen to an accusation against an elder unless it is confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. Those who sin should be reprimanded in front of the whole church. This will serve as a strong warning to others. And this is why you see rebuke videos go out. You say, oh, y'all always getting on. Well, this is a protocol. Certain things, if you off, your doctrine is off. Okay? Your doctrine is completely off where you should be reprimanded in front of the church. Okay? So it can be a strong warning to others, man. All right? Or certain things that you're doing is off. Hey, certain things, hey, make the headlines, man, of the church. Okay? Because it can serve as a strong warning to others, man. Okay? It says, I solemnly command you in the presence of the Most High and Yahweh Shah HaMashiach and the highest angels to obey these instructions without taking sides or showing favoritism to anyone. Never be in a hurry about appointing a church leader. Do not share in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure. All right. So he's telling Timothy also in verse 23, don't drink only water. You ought to drink a little wine for the sake of your stomach because you are sick, so often. Okay. Remember the sins of some people are obvious, all right, leading them to certain judgment. But there are others whose sins will not be revealed until later, man. In the spirit, okay, is going to reveal, certain things are blatant, in the open. Okay. And certain, the Lord allows, certain people to, just linger around, they ain't right. And then they reveal at that point in time. And it's all in the Lord's time. You see? And it says, in the same way, the good deeds of some people are obvious, and the good deeds done in secret will someday come to light, man, because there's a lot of things, that's done, off camera, okay, that the church don't see, but the Lord see it, and the Lord gonna reward, at his coming. That's why I say we're not here, for views and gimmicks and to be seen and to be these characters. We're here to serve, man. Whether we're on live stream or not day to day, we're here to serve. And the Lord gonna reward, openly every good thing done in secret. So whatever part we play in this ministry, around the forefront, the background, both, wherever, okay, just keep playing, the part, the role that the Lord, has for us. Now I wanna go here, like I say, because the chat, man, I think I check man, no Bible on the screen, god damn. Y'all can read along. Oh boy. So yeah, let's go here. Okay. So I asked the chat. Okay. All right, so I asked the chat, all right, overview on 1 Timothy chapter 5. Okay. It said, was Apostle Paul establishing protocol for a welfare system amongst the church of Ephesus? Okay. So it's an excellent question. Yes, in 1 Timothy chapter 5, the Apostle Paul is indeed giving Timothy detailed instructions for how to organize care and support within the church of Ephesus, and a significant portion of that chapter focuses on what we call an early church welfare system. Okay. Now jumping down, All right. It says care for widows. It said this is the main section establishing what looks like a church-based welfare protocol. All right. It said honor widows who are truly in need. The word honor implies financial and practical support, not just respect. Paul distinguishes between widows in real needs and those who have family to care for them. If a widow has children or grandchildren, they should care for her, not the church. Paul framed this as a moral and religious duty. Failing to provide for one's own household is to deny the faith. Paul describes a formal enrollment system. Widows must be 60, faithful to one husband, known for good deeds, raising children, showing hospitality, serving the saints, helping the afflicted. This implies an organized registry of widows who will receive ongoing church support and possible serve in ministry roles. All right. And so there's another thing. They weren't just sitting down getting a handout, they were still actively aiding, okay, the church, like prayer, teaching younger women, okay, teaching younger women or hospitality. All right. It said Paul advises against enrolling younger widows as their needs and life circumstances differ. They are encouraged to remarry, manage households, and not become dependent on the church aid unnecessarily. Okay, which is what you see running rampant on Esau's system. All right, and Esau did that. Okay, for the fact of dysfunction, instability. See, Esau used welfare to destabilize, okay, the tribes, man. Okay, that was the main purpose of him giving this aid, was to destabilize, all right, the tribes. All right, now are there people that actually need aid? Absolutely. Okay, are there people that just, like older people that can't work, disabled, and have nobody? Absolutely, there's people that need aid. Okay. Well, are there a lot of people, able bodied, all right, that just abuse the system because it's there? Okay. And not only abuse it, okay, they go out and, uh, have, these children, okay, with no structure to get more of the benefits. Okay. So they get the immediate benefits, okay, but the long term effects, all right, are crucial. Okay, it said just as or go from there. I want to put emphasize. So I asked it again. It says, was Paul injecting the welfare system based on the welfare system of Israelites under the law of Moses? It says, excellent. That's a deeply insightful question. And you're exactly right to connect First Timothy, all right, to both the Greco-Roman world and the Israelite welfare system under the law of Moses. All right, it says the Israelite welfare system under the law of Moses. It says under the Mosaic law, the Most High established a social and economic safety net to protect the vulnerable, especially the poor, widows, orphans, and foreigners. These principles shape the moral backbone of Israelite society. All right, it says widows and orphans. All right, so you go Deuteronomy, all right, 10 and 18. All right, Deuteronomy 14, 28, 29, Exodus 22, verses 22 through 24. It said the Most High identifies himself as their protector. Israelites were forbidden to, all right, exploit or neglect them. Speaking of the widows and orphans, it says farmers left the edges of their fields and leftover harvest for the poor and the widows. A portion of the tithe supported the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows. So a portion of the tithes would, all right, have the support of the widows and orphans, all right, and the Israelite foreigners coming back to reestablish themselves. Okay, when a portion of those tithes went towards that as well. Okay, it said debts were forgiven. All right, this is the year of Jubilee. You had debts were forgiven, slaves freed, and land returned, preventing generational poverty. Preventing generational poverty, man. Okay, but you look at Esau's welfare system, it's meant to forward generation poverty. Okay, because your debts will be forgiven. All right, your you was in servitude, you will be free from servitude, and you will get land, and you will be able to, enterprise on your own property and create wealth. Okay. But this system, all right, Esau's system, what does it do? It pushes generational poverty. We had a system that prevented generational poverty. Okay, well, Jake can come up. All right. And it says male relatives, Deuteronomy 25, all right, verses 5 through 10, Ruth chapter 4. It said male relatives had a duty to marry a deceased brother's widow, all right, to provide for her and preserve family lineage. Okay. You see that? So even when you go into the law, it was all about making sure everybody was good. The law was full of safety nets. Okay, not just women just having these children, then you just give them more money for having more children. All right, that's extremely destructive. It causes dysfunction, man. No, if a woman, a younger woman, died, okay, and she had, no, she didn't give her husband any heirs to inherit, okay, his land, his estates, well, her brother, his brother, all right, which will be her brother-in-law, okay, while her husband was living. But now that the husband is dead, she's free from that covenant of marriage. So he takes her on as a wife, all right. So she has now a caretaker, okay, and the next generation, okay, will have what a heir, all right. He will produce an heir for that generation, all right, for the next generation to inherit those estates and keep building. You see? So the system that we had and the system of Esau is completely different. Now you go into the core principles. It says covenant covenant yeah, covenantal responsibility. Caring for the poor was part of the faithfulness to Yahweh Bashem Al Shah. The poor worked gleaning rather than relying solely on handouts, because you had to go get those, you had to go get, what was left over, from the harvest. All right. It wasn't delivered to you. You had to go get it. It says support was local, relational, and family centered. Yeah. So you would have, like I say, if a woman became a widow, all right, and her husband had brothers or next to kin, that would take her on. All right. So she would have a caretaker. All right. And, heirs will be produced to afford, those estates and that land. All right. She didn't have to go out and, put a profile on Tinder. Okay. Go to happy hour every Tuesday to try to meet some random nigga that try to restart. No, it was already safety net set up. All right. It says, wherefore wasn't charity, it was obedience to the Most High's justice. Okay. It says now when you go into the Greco-Roman welfare system, all right, it was corrupt, you know. Wealthy patrons gave aid, or favors in exchange for loyalty and public honor. All right. The Roman state provided food distributions in major cities, but mostly for citizens and often for political loyalty, man. Because you look at, the government benefits they attach to what the Democrats, you know, you see. Just like in Rome, they would give you aid, all right, but you had to know, well, this is the party responsible for giving you aid, so support this party. It was all political, based in corruption. It says outside of family patronage, widows had almost no safety net. Many resorted to servitude, prostitution, or joining pagan temples, all right, orders for survival. Okay, in Rome, get it how you live. Okay, is this not the same type of system that's set up now? Corrupt and destructive. Okay, it says so in this setting, Christian care for widows was radically countercultural, not transactional or political, but rooted in love, holiness and family responsibility, man. And we have a beautiful law, a beautiful system, which is a reflection of the Most High's wisdom, you know. So there was a point, Lord will, you brothers and sisters was edified, so lucky for not having the Bible pulled up, during that time. But you can read First Timothy, read along, all right, and get into it. But Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified to next time. I say Shalom, Kwam Nashala, Abba, soon, Shalom.